Hello, welcome. I am Philip Hawkins. I have a YouTube channel in which I often discuss various pop culture things, including quite a lot of Doctor Who. I also celebrate a lot of random holidays every single day of the year. That's not really relevant to this video until we probably get to November, when I will probably celebrate on the 23rd Doctor Who Day, because that if nobody's celebrating that already as a national holiday, why not? Anyway, I'm here today, thank you to YouTube Gallifrey02 for letting me come on to review for you guys this. No, not that one. This one. The Keys of Marinus. The 5th ever serial of Doctor Who, which was written by Terry Nation. Yes, the man behind the Daleks. It was one that employed a interesting device which hadn't been used up to that point anyway, in Doctor Who. I know there was only 6 before that, so there's not really much time to establish a pattern, but what this one did is used sort of stories within a story. You had the overall serial, the Keys of Marinus story, and then within that, several of the episodes were very self-contained. They each had a beginning, a middle, and an end, which gave it a completely different feel and kept it quite fresh, I think. It was an interesting ploy. It was something that they would go on in Doctor Who to use again in various different ways, in a sort of expanded way with things like the Key to Time and Trial of a Time Lord, and even in a much more subtler way with the new series with Russell T Davies and his plot arcs in seasons, Bad Wolf, Torchwood. They all kind of come from the same similar idea of using smaller stories, self-contained stories with their own beginning and middle and ends, but within the scope of a bigger story. It's quite an interesting device, I thought. So, what happens in the Keys of Marinus? Well, it could take a lot of explaining, and in fact, I'm not going to go into every single plot point of this because it would take us at least 10 minutes, and I'm sure you don't want to sit through that. If you do want to sit through that, I have a video on my channel which goes into the plot in a lot more detail, so please do check that out. But here, I'm going to try and keep it to a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes of just explaining some of the bare bones of the plot. In fact, let's make that a challenge. I'm not going to know if I'm successful until I come to edit this, but let's say I'm going to try and explain this in like a minute and a half tops. Okay, here we go. So, the TARDIS crew of the Doctor, Ian, Barbara and Susan land on the planet of Marinus on an island which is made of glass. And it has a sea of acid surrounding it. There's a submarine there, they don't want to know what that's about. But they go into this building, and there's this old guy there called Arbatan, and he has this machine which can control people. They used to use it as the sort of justice system on this planet to keep everybody in line, because it can mind control you. But long ago, they stopped using this machine because it stopped working on the Vord. The Vord are now attacking, and they want to control the machine. So, long ago when they stopped using it, they sent out these keys that you use to control the machine out into the world to spread them around, to hide them, I guess. He's been sending various people over the last several years to go and retrieve them. They've all gone. He's the last one left. Now he's got the TARDIS crew there. He blackmails into going and finding these keys for him so that he can use it on the Vord, because he's upgraded it and now it should work on the Vord. Woo. Right, so TARDIS crew being blackmailed have gone off. And this is where the separate adventures start. So, the very first sort of self-contained story is basically that they are in what looks like a luxury, feels like a luxury. Everyone looks, they're getting fed grapes and things, but actually they're all in tatters. It's a rundown palace and rundown ruin, and they're just being mind controlled by these brains in jars. Which, side note, no, don't have time for side notes, I'll come back to that. So they smash the jars and they get this key, which Arbatan's daughter has, and her and her boyfriend join them on the quest. Whew. In the next episode, they end up in a jungle, and there's these alive plants. Alive plants? No, wait, hold on, all plants are alive. Sentient plants, I guess? Plants that can react, and basically the plants try and kill them. So the plants try and kill them, but they find a science station where the plants were created, I think, and there's another key. Great. Then they're off to an icy place, and this place is just ice and caves and wind everywhere, but they find a nice little hut. It's got a not very nice man in it, though. He treats them horribly, tries to blackmail them, potentially tries to rape Barbara. It gets a bit dodgy. But they escape, and they go to a cave where they find the key in a big block of ice, but it's surrounded by these 4 frozen guards. But when they try and melt the ice, it also thaws the guards. Thaws. Not the guy with the hammer. Thaws. Whatever. The guard. And yeah, they attack him. They attack the TARDIS crew when they're trying to get the key. But they, again, Ian does his heroic stuff and they get away. It's all good. Then the next episode is kind of like, I suppose you'd describe it as sort of Law and Order Time Travelers Unit, because it's basically a police procedural. Ian gets framed for murder in a museum where the key is, and there's a court trial. Turns out, spoiler alert, the prosecutor that's prosecuting him was the actual murderer. He's the bad guy in this episode. That kind of stretches over 2 episodes, actually. Yeah. And but then they've got all the keys after that court trial has sorted, and then they're back off to the Glass Island, and there they find that the Vord have killed the old guy. The Vord are trying to pose as the old guy. It doesn't really work. He asks for the keys while he's one of the Vord while posing as the old guy, and but Ian's onto him, and he gives him a fake key which they picked up earlier, which I hadn't mentioned, and the machine explodes, and therefore the Vord can't get it, and effectively the TARDIS crew win. Whew, did I do that? I don't know. Don't know what time it was when I started. But look, the review. Let's get down to that. I think up to this point, I've been watching all of the Hartnell eras in order for a series on my channel called Doctor Who Rebrief. And up to this point, where we got to this point, I would say this was my favourite serial. And the reason, I think, is the device they used. I think a lot of old classic Who suffers immensely, certainly for a modern audience, because it's just quite difficult to watch because of the pacing. And also, you've got the bad sets, and you've got the sometimes quite cheesy acting. But on this one, the pacing is really helped by that device of having the separate stories, because it breaks up the flow a bit, which is quite nice, I think. It doesn't feel as, you've got new scenery to look at, you've got new supporting characters every episode. And I think that keeps it moving, keeps it at a nice pace. It's quite good, I think. In terms of the characters themselves, the Doctor is pretty much his standard self here. He shines quite a bit in the courtroom scenes later on in the latter half of the serial. He actually disappears for 2 episodes, though. I think William Hartnell had a holiday, so he's not in 2 episodes. This is the origin, probably, of the Doctor Light episodes, and he's just gone. But what that does mean is that we get a really focused couple of episodes on Barbara and Ian, the sort of unrequited love couple of the earlier Doctor Who. I'm always rooting for them to get together, but they never do. They come close to kissing a few times. Or at least I feel they do. Like, there's tension there. Real tension. And then they just don't kiss. Or they get interrupted. I'm still shipping them. Come on, Ian and Barbara. If somebody knows of any Big Finish where they've hooked up, tell me about that. I'd like to check that one out. So yeah, you get quite a nice focus on them, and that is something you don't often see in these early Whos, which have quite a large TARDIS crew, really. They've, 4 is quite a lot of regular characters for Doctor Who, to be in every single episode. I mean, for modern audiences, a lot of throughout the whole Russell T Davies era, it was pretty much a TARDIS team of 2. They've got to expand a little bit with Rory coming on board, with his wife, and he had a TARDIS team of 3, and it looks like we're getting a TARDIS team of 3 for the next series as well. But 4 is quite a lot, so to have these sort of quieter moments where some of the characters are gone for a while, I think that really benefits these characters, and you've got to see quite a lot from it. And Barbara really shines in these episodes, I think. She comes, she's good at portraying the strong leader, something we'd seen a hint at in the Aztecs, just the serial before. She shines in this, I think. I think Barbara is definitely a standout. Not so good on the character front would be Susan. Susan never really gets much character development throughout the whole of her television run, and it's a real shame. She's mostly there to scream, it seems, and this is no different in this serial. She pretty much is the damsel in distress, and it's just disappointing to watch. I mean, she's from Gallifrey. She should be less scared than the humans, but she comes across in this as really, really childish. And you know, I say there's no development with her at all. You'd noticed maybe, I can't remember if it was the Aztecs. I can't even remember if it's before this. At one point, you do notice that in one serial she acts a bit more grown up, and then the next episode is gone again. Next serial, it's gone again. It's a real shame. What else can I say about this? I thought the sets were interesting. I wouldn't quite go as far as to say they were amazing. This is still the 60s, and the sets are always a bit iffy to a modern audience. But I think for what they had, they're having to create a new set every single week, which when recording effectively as live as they used to, that's quite a big intensive ask for the production team, and they did it really well, I think. They created some quite good sets. I think the jungle one lacked a little bit, because I think a lot of times when you get jungle in Old Who, you don't get that perspective, and you don't get the feeling that there's more than the tree that's in front of them there. But where they shined on this, I think, was the snowy landscapes, and I think that worked really well, and they did a good impression of making it seem like this expansive area filled with snow, and a lot of that, I imagine, was just achieved with the lighting that you can do in black and white and fool the cameras into thinking that it goes on forever. But that was really good. I quite liked the sort of perspective that they tried to create with making the building look really big. The Arbitan's building, they used some sort of backdrops that with forced perspective that make it look really good. So that was good on the set side of things. I also quite liked the villains, the Vord. You might be able to see them there. I think they look quite good for classic Who monsters. They're they've got these rubbery masks from rubbery suits. We don't know what's under them, and they look menacing, even to a modern audience. I think they are primed to be returned to. Chris Chibnall, if you're watching, then I think Vord, series 12, 11 or 12, whatever, please, Vord. But I think they only really appear in the first and the last episodes of the serial, and I think that works really well, because it keeps that mystery to them. It makes you want to see more of them. So yeah, I'd love to see them back in Who another time. Talking of villains in the rest of it, going back to the brains, because I noticed something there when I first reviewed this on my channel. I mentioned and said, they should bring those back. Mind controlling brains in jars with eyes on stalks. That sounds quite good. And then what did we get in the Christmas special this year? Just gone. We got some brains in jars with eyes. It's like you read my mind. Now, whether or not they're the same species, or a related species, or completely unrelated, who knows? But I like to think they're the same species, or at least related, like the Ood and the Sensorites. That would be good. I like that idea. So what didn't I like? Susan screaming, as I've already mentioned. Some of the stories were weaker than others. I really liked the Icy Landscape episode. I thought that dealt with some interesting themes. But when it came to the fight scene, not so good. I mean, the fight choreography in this is pretty poor, I think. It's lacking, and that's not just the era, because they did some brilliant fight scene choreography in the very first serial with the cavemen. That fight between two cavemen that is in that serial, when they're hurling rocks at each other and fist fighting, that was amazingly choreographed in that serial. But this one, it just looks really fake. Over-exaggerated swings of swords, which clearly miss, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't look in any way realistic. It just looks like, well, you could have run away in that time, or you could have easily pushed him over in that time. It just doesn't quite ring true, which is a shame. Another thing that doesn't ring true in this story is just the logic of the plot. I like the fact that they're going out and doing these individual missions, but they didn't need to at all. The logic of the plot doesn't make sense, because basically they need to stop the Vord using this machine. That is the whole plot, and that's how they resolve it. They end up, it blows up. That's how the plot is resolved. All they needed to do is destroy one of the keys, because you need all of the keys to operate the machine. They could have got the very first key, snapped it in half, ground it into dust with a rock, and problem solved. And they would have been in exactly the same point as they end up in the very final episode. But no, they carry on and endanger themselves more when they don't really need to. That logic plot flaw bugs me a little bit. Oh yeah, they have terrible eyesight in this. I mean, like, bad guy standing, like, there, and they don't see him. I don't know why. At one point, Susan is walking down a corridor, there's a Vord just there, and she doesn't see him. You can quite clearly see he's in her line of sight, but nope, doesn't see him. And again, with the ice warriors that are standing around the block of ice that holds the key in one of the episodes, they don't even acknowledge they're standing there. I mean, they don't even make a comment about, oh, look at these statues. They don't even indicate that they think they're statues. They just completely act like they're not even there. And so when they de-thaw, it's like, well, why didn't you see them there? Even if you thought they were statues, you'd I don't know, it's just, they didn't look like statues either. So that was a bit odd as well. I didn't like that. Anything else? No, I think that's it. I think, you know, overall, I think the good points outweigh those bad points, though. This is a story that tried something different. It tried a bit of a different format, and I think it worked. I think it helped the pace that the older episodes often suffer for, and some of the repercussions of that, of the Doctor splitting off for a couple of episodes, led to some nice character stuff with a couple of characters which we could focus on. And overall, despite the logic flaws of it, I quite like, it was an exciting plot, and if you can get over those logic flaws, I think it's got quite a lot of excitement to it. I would probably recommend this one as one to someone to check out if you manage to introduce them to it, you know, tentatively into a bit of early Doctor Who. This is one of the early ones they could check out, I think, without being put off. I'd probably give it, out of 10, I would give it 8? No, 7. 7.5. Let's go 7.5. I would give it 7.5 out of 10. So there you go. That's my review of Keys of Marinus. Thank you for watching. Thank you for YouTube Gallifrey02 for having me on the channel to review this. If you want to see more of me and some of my friends reviewing old William Hartnell Doctor Who, check out my Doctor Who Rebrief, where we watch a serial, me and my friends watch a serial in one go, and then we sit around and just chat about it on the sofa, basically, for about 10 minutes. So, you know, we've gone up to the Dalek Invasion of Earth for those, and hoping to do some more later on this year, if I can find the filming time to get this all together. But thank you again for watching, and enjoy the rest of the content on YouTube Gallifrey's channel, as I often do. Thank you. Bye bye.